Hello, everyone. Thanks for joining us for Give Your Booth a Boost. We're excited to share with you Jess Burke from MDG Agency, who is our marketing partner for the Car Wash Show. We'll be going through some pre-show marketing strategies and best practices. We're excited for this new partnership with our new agency, MDG, on the show. One of the things you'll kind of see and be able to view as Jess is going through this all is that we do have a new whole marketing theme. And what this really is driven from is that after doing a lot of research, our consumer research specifically about why people wash their cars, it typically is related to the feelings that they get when they wash their cars, which is of happiness and joy and clean, good fun. So you kind of see that our new marketing campaign really reflects that. So with that being said, I'm going to turn it over to Jess, who's going to go through how you can really give your booth a boost for the upcoming Car Wash Show.
Well, thank you, Carrie. I'm really glad to hear that the visuals of this new campaign are really resonating emotionally. And as Carrie said, my name is Jess and I work for MDG. We're so proud and excited to partner with the Car Wash Show in 2019. So I want to dive right in. A little bit about me. I've worked in the association and event space for 10 years, and I've been in your shoes in the position of thinking ahead to a show and thinking about what I'm going to do to make it successful. So I've marketed shows as a whole. I've marketed the presence of an individual booth or company. And I've been in that role from strategic planning, but all the way down to waiting for the electrical guy to show up so that I can finally go get some dinner. So having been all along that spectrum, you can tell that I really love events. I have a passion for what goes on at them, even some of the sitting and waiting. I'm definitely one of those people who's energized by what goes on at a trade show floor. And if you're watching this, you are too. So my presentation today is designed to kind of build on that feeling of excitement and anticipation and get you motivated to work with your team to put together a plan that will market your presence at the Car Wash Show successfully. So for our agenda today, I'm going to walk you through a few topics that will get you really well prepared for drawing as many buyers to your booth as possible at the Car Wash Show. We're going to start by talking about how we are getting buyers to Car Wash. We're going to set some goals and objectives for your booth presence. We're going to talk through understanding the audience to best strategize your approach. We'll explore some tried and true ways to drive traffic, as well as some new and innovative ones that you might not have thought of yet. We'll be preparing you and your team for the booth as best as we can, and we'll be working on the partners and promotion tools that we've created to offer to all of our exhibitors this year. So at MDG, we specialize in marketing leading trade events like Car Wash and ensuring that we get thousands of qualified buyers to attend. So we have a marketing plan that is strategic and that is also really robust. It includes direct mail, digital and print media, an email campaign, public relations activities, and of course, a web presence. And each year we strive to cast a wider net, shout a louder message, and share the excitement of the Car Wash Show through innovative new channels that are relevant to your customers. We have a multi-step direct mail campaign planned for Car Wash, and that includes mailings to 20,000 targeted mailings to Car Wash retailers. We have a robust digital and social plan for the show, which includes display ad retargeting, paid social presence, and an organic social presence that's designed to keep the Car Wash Show at the top of people's minds leading up to May. We're working in print media. We have a print campaign that really works by developing and leveraging relationships with a variety of publications. So that includes print ads, but also strategically placed content to make sure that people know that the Car Wash Show is really relevant to their business, no matter the publication that they're most interested in. We also have an aggressive targeted email campaign that promotes different aspects of the show And not only is this a robust campaign, it's really a smart one. We're using behavior targeting to make sure that we're reaching people who are showing us that they're interested in the messaging. So people who interact with emails and click on links and engage with us are going to get more and smarter messaging throughout the campaign. As I mentioned, we have strong relationships with the trade press, so they'll be featuring our press releases and, again, other content leading up to the event. And of course, no show would be complete without a website. So we have a user-friendly site that's growing all the time. So as things get finalized at the show, we're adding and developing the website to make sure that it matches the needs of attendees and of exhibitors. So since this session is really all about getting ready for the show, I'm going to talk a lot about what you can do to get your booth ready and get your team ready. But in marketing, strategy really needs to come before tactics. So before you just start sending out emails and making posts all over the place, you really need to know what it is you're trying to say, why you're saying it, and what you want to achieve. So the real question that I'm asking is, what's your signal? And by that, I really mean, what is it that makes your company unique? So every one of you comes from a company that does at least one thing totally differently than everyone else. And if I'm saying that and you're racking your brain for what that thing is, you have a little homework. And that homework is to get together with your leadership team, get together with your marketing team, your stakeholders, and really figure out what it is that you are using as a differentiator. What is it about your company that makes customers or potential customers more interested in you than anyone else? And once you know that message, you can really be building it into your booth presence, and you really need to. If I know that you provide a product in a way that nobody else does, an invitation to stop by your booth doesn't feel like an interruption or an annoyance. It really truly feels like an invitation. So once you have that message in place, that's when you can start building your tactics. So the first step to really getting to that place is to set objectives. Once you know what it is that you're trying to tell people, you want to think about what you're trying to achieve by telling them. So these goals for your booth presence are what you want to accomplish, not how you plan to accomplish it. And I'll get into that in some of my examples in a few minutes. These goals should be quantifiable, which means that they're measurable numerically. You need to define and include those metrics from the start. So if you don't know how you're going to ascertain success, it's not really a goal yet. So again, you need to define success. That means, what types of leads you're after, what audience you want to influence. If you don't know what success looks like, you can't really ever get there. Part of why you want to measure these objectives so carefully is that they really need to be part of your overall ROI analysis. So as you measure your company's performance quarterly, yearly, whatever it is that you do, these goals need to be a part of that evaluation. So we're really used to thinking about return on investment, right? That's absolutely part of how we market or evaluate the success of an event and how we marketed it. So did we get what we paid for? And then when we break it down, was that worth it? I don't really want to go too in depth on return on investment because I think most companies have a really good handle on how to measure it, how to measure, return on dollars. But you should know that marketers are building on ROI and talking a lot about other kinds of return when we look at the success of events and of marketing campaigns. And these should all be looked at before you make any final decisions on ROI. One of them is return on impressions. And this is really the combination of a hard and soft metric. So the hard metric here is just how many people see you out in the marketplace. It's just the eyeballs on you. Impressions on a social post, the hard number of people that registered for a trade show and came on the floor. So if nothing else, we can say that they saw you. This is typically tied into goals or objectives that have to do with brand awareness. So if you're trying to raise awareness, you're trying to raise impressions. The softer metric for impressions is really how people perceive that presence. So they see you at the show, but what are they thinking? What is their impression of you? You want to increase positive perception, obviously. You want, when people see your company, your booth, or the product that you have on display, you want them to think about how that aligns with their own goals and objectives. So you want to also try to be aligning these perceptions wherever possible with your brand values. So back to your signal, whatever you know it is that you do best, you want to make sure that that's what you're getting people to think of you. It doesn't really mean much that you know your value if people aren't picking it up. So some questions to ask yourself about these types of goals. What's your company built on? Are you trying to be dependable? Are you trying to be an innovator? Are you a knowledge center? So if your return on impressions is going well, public perception should be encapsulating the same kinds of phrases you use when you talk about your value. So if you talk about your own company or your product as innovative, dependable, any of those examples, you should really see those phrases and ideas being reflected out in the marketplace, on social, in product feedback forms, and that's a way to measure impression. Another type of return here that you can build into your goals for a presence at a show is engagement, a return on engagement. So when the connections you make really start to pay off, that's a payoff on engagement. So an example here is if someone shares your content on social media and that yields a new lead or contact, that's successful engagement. That's how we measure buzz. So the metric here can also be understood as something like shares. So if it's social posts, that's how many people click share and repost it to their wall. You can measure that. You can also measure how many people like your post or comment on it. That's a way to evaluate engagement. And at a show, you can be measuring engagement through badge scans, the number of cards you collect, the number of conversations you're having, how many meetings you're having. So there's a variety of ways on a show floor to measure engagement. Finally, we want to talk about return on objectives. So this is when our met or achieve objectives actually start to yield results, when we really start to move the needle on an objective. And because there's so many types of metrics, there's a lot of ways to measure this type of return. So I'm going to give you some examples now on objectives you can set for a trade show presence, how to set them up for success, and how to think about measuring and evaluating them during and after the show. So one objective you might set for your trade show presence, for your presence at the car wash show, is that you want to generate 100 qualified sales leads. So as I said a few slides ago, the first thing you want to do with an objective is to define your terms. So you might say that a sales lead is someone at a car wash retailer with purchasing authority. That you're defining that as the individual that you most care about. Then you really want to think about how you're going to actually measure that. So in this case, you could say that you want to evaluate the lead report at the end of the show and calculate the number of leads that match that definition. So I would also add that if you pick that number, 100, you want to make that number realistic. I'm including it because 100 is an easy number. But you would want to go ahead and take a look at past show leads and see what you achieved. So if you achieved 500 qualified sales leads last year, 100 probably isn't a good objective for you. But if you got 70 or 80, then 100 is kind of right on target for growing the number of leads you're acquiring. So another objective might be to conduct meetings with 10 key customers. This would again be more about engagement, right? Getting 100 leads is really about impressions, getting new people into your feed. Having these types of meetings with customers is more if your goals are aligned with having more engagement, right? So the first step is to define that term. In this case, a key customer could be an existing account that generates more than $10,000 in annual purchases from our company. And again, those numbers should be set by reviewing past statistics if you have them. You'll also want to measure it. So you want to track your appointments set at the show, as well as any spontaneous meetings that sales reps are conducting, and then tally them all up at the end of the show. And again, I guess I would say too that those numbers should be set by reviewing previous numbers, but if you don't have those numbers, it's really okay to set an objective that's just establishing a benchmark or set a baseline. So we don't know how many key customers are right, or we don't know what counts as key, how many dollars we're looking for. So it's okay to collect data that just evaluates that, and then next year you'll be better prepared to set a more accurate metric. So for our third objective, here's another possibility. You might get together with your team and decide that there's a specific product that's really important for you and that you want to increase awareness of that product. And you might say you want to increase awareness by 5%. This is an objective, again, that's kind of a combination of engagement and impressions. So first you have to define what it means for someone to be aware of your product. You have to define that benchmark. You might do that by conducting research before the show. So you would have like a social survey, something on SurveyMonkey, where you ask people to be able to recall a product name. Whether you gave them a list to select from or ask them to enter it is totally up to you. You can also do surveys like this over the phone with key contacts, over the phone with warm leads. That's really up to your sort of research and marketing team, how they want to do that. And the important thing is that, at the end of the show, you want to measure in the same way. So you would want to gauge any change in awareness in the same fashion. So if you called people, call different people. So you want to have sort of a reflective sample on both ends of the show that lets you decide if awareness increased or not. And this, again, would be something that you could do a month after the show, 2 months after the show, 6 months after the show, and see how it changes over time. That'll help you understand if the show really had an effect. Goals like this are really helpful for product launches or new lines, or if you're noticing a flag and that sales are starting to drop on something, figure out if awareness is the reason or if it's something else. So this is a really great exercise to do with your exhibit team. I've offered some objectives that you could absolutely plug and play, just take those objectives and run with them. But sort of the thoroughest way to do this is to get your marketing team involved, your sales team, and even someone from leadership. A lot of the measurement here involves buy-in from people on a variety of teams. You need your sales people to log their meetings. You need your marketing people to survey people. So it's best to not set these goals in a silo, and it's best to figure them out as a team so that everybody has some buy-in on how it's going to work. So the first step for this as a team is to prioritize which objectives are most important. Consider your ROI, consider the importance to your other company goals, and consider the terms. So it wouldn't be great to have too many long-term goals, or especially not too many short-term goals, because you can't move the needle on everything at once. And in that vein, the second thing to do is to cut them down. So 3 to 5 is really good for one show. You don't necessarily want to go in with 20 objectives, because just measuring them becomes really onerous. Your team is spending all their time logging their meetings and tracking their metrics. They're not able to actually develop products or talk about, learn about new things in the industry. So you don't really want to make it so hard to review the results that you can't implement them. And finally, you need to set a time to evaluate, and I mean now. So put something on the calendar with your team for after the show to sit down and review all of the objectives, make sure you have the data you need, and set a plan for evaluating and acting on what you learned. So I know people are going to look at you crazy if you put something on the calendar now for the end of May after the car wash show, but I really recommend it. Just get people thinking now about what they're going to do with that information after the show. So here's a little pop quiz for you. According to the Center for Exhibition Industry Research, which we call CEIR, what percentage of attendees come to a trade show with an agenda? I won't make you all unmute yourself and guess, but I'll let you look at it and think about it. It really is 75% of people. The vast majority of people who plan trade show presence for themselves as attendees come in knowing what they want to do. That can be as broad as, I want to check out the trade show floor, or I want to check out all of a specific kind of product. I'm looking for new brushes. I'm looking for new automation. But it might be as granular as, okay, these are the 10 booths I have to see, or these are the 10 people I want to meet with. And that's why this webinar is called pre-show marketing. You can't wait till you're on site to start drawing people to your booth. So this is what you came for. How are we going to get buyers to your booth? Really, this means you need to start setting those objectives right now. And since all of the objectives you're going to set really end up translating to get people to come to your booth or meet with you at the show, booth traffic is really what it's all about. So not to sound callous or, I don't know, mercenary about it, but to make people do something, you have to know what they're thinking. That's really what marketing is. Don't tell anyone I told you that. This research comes from CEIR's 2017 attendee engagement study, which you can actually buy for yourself at CEIR.org. And the study has a lot of moving pieces. One of the things that CEIR does is measure the booth offerings that attendees say they really like, that they find value in, and then they actually compare it to how many exhibitors are actually doing those things. So when we look at this data, we're looking for discrepancies, gaps between the columns. We're looking for things they value that you don't do and things you do that they couldn't care less about. So this slide is really about people. This is about who attendees want to talk to. You probably, based on these numbers, have just about the right number of sales and marketing staff at your booth. That's these columns on the left here. So 81% of attendees say that that's something they value, and 75% of you are doing it. So they know they need to meet salespeople. You staff your booth with salespeople. All good, nothing to fix here. The columns in the middle here are a little bit more illuminating, right? 79% of attendees say they want to talk to technical product experts. That means maybe people from R&D or a product designer. You know, if you're listening and nodding along right now, that means you're in that 52% of people who brings one of these experts to your booth with you. You've seen the results. Attendees want to ask questions that salespeople don't always have the answer to. And so if they're there, then those conversations become a lot more meaningful and engaging. Same with executive management. If you don't already have leaders in your booth, think about if that's practical for your team, if it's practical to get one or two of them there. Even if it's just for a particular window at the show that they're going to be in the booth, then letting people know they're going to be in the booth. So for some businesses, this might be more relevant than technical experts. You know, if you have a sort of more strategic or consulting based business, or if what you're doing is more along the lines of, you know, app or leadership development, that might be more relevant for you. Again, 72% of attendees say that executive management is on their list of people to talk to, and only 56% of exhibitors are providing those individuals. So now this portion of the same study is really about experiential stuff. This is what there is to do at your booth and how people are getting information out of you. So these gaps are a little bit bigger, right? So on the left, we have interactive product displays. This is stuff like touch screens. You know, if we're really looking into the future, this could be VR or, you know, AR, augmented reality, where people can see things happening. This could be demos. This is about a 30% discrepancy, which is pretty big here. So people are wanting to engage and interact to get hands-on, and less than half of exhibitors are providing that to them. We see the same thing with this badge scan piece, right? So it's telling us kind of the same thing. Scanning a badge and getting product information later on over email. That's really a preferred method of getting information on what you're offering. And not a lot of people are taking advantage of the tools that we have at the car wash show for, you know, planning, you know, having handouts available, being able to send out emails through the exhibitor system. So these tools are available to you in your exhibitor dashboard, and you should really take a look at them because it is something that attendees are interested in. And less attendees are looking to get brochures or print. 62% want printed product info, and almost 90% of exhibitors have that at their booths. Now, I'm a print girl. I'm never going to say that you should go paper free. I think there's something really wonderful about, you know, holding a well-designed piece of information in your hands, being able to take it home and look at it later, having it on someone's desk. But you guys kind of have to figure out how to close those gaps on the left. I think that's more urgent than just cutting all of your print, right? If you're giving people interactive options and, you know, following up via email after the show, as well as having printed product, that's more important than just, you know, throwing out all the paper you've already taken the time to design and print. And then the elephant in the room is really that big gap on the right? So attendees say they value interactivity in the form of games so much. They value it more than paper. 67% of people want some kind of gamification at a booth. And at least in last year's research, very few exhibitors were actually doing this, less than 10%. I'll get to games later. So to sum a lot of this up, here's 4 key things that you can consider doing to drive booth traffic. These aren't exhaustive, but these are things that we know work. So unveil new products or features. You know, discovery is one of these key moods that exhibitors say they're looking for, that feeling, right? They want to know what's new, and in a lot of cases, they want to be the first one to know. And one way to make them feel that way is to make them feel like, well, if you're at the show, you're going to see a product launch, or we've added a new feature, and you're going to be the first to witness it. So if you've got something in the hopper for the rest of the year, see if you can wait until the show to unveil it or bump it up if it's going to be ready, even if it's just a video demo. You know, making people feel like coming to your booth is going to show them something they've never seen before is a great focus for messaging. If that's the message you're sending people as you invite them to your booth, you're going to get a lot more eyes and ears. Consider advertising or sponsoring. So like I said, 75% of people have a plan for their show experience by the time they get to the show. And many of them start as much as 6 months in advance, which if that's now. So be on their radar early if you're advertising your booth presence in formally, you know, via a relationship you might have with a print magazine, if it's informally by just paying for some ads on Facebook or Google advertising. You know, those are all options. And there are sponsorship opportunities as well with the car wash show where you get some promotion before and at the show that helps drive people to your booth. So if it's not something you feel you can do by yourself, connect with the car wash staff and figure out what options are available for you. Think again about your booth presence. So those slides where I talked about whether or not, you know, R&D individuals, executives, you know, think about the mix of people that you have and think about, you know, making sure you're never at a point in your booth where it's all sales people. Try to keep a couple of other individuals who are able to speak to the products, the features that you offer. And so before you just start booking rooms just for your salespeople, think about if there's anyone else you can throw into the mix now. And finally, gamification. So we've established that this is a key opportunity for exhibitors and a fun space to explore. So I'm just going to break it down a little bit more for you in case this is something you're already considering bringing to your booth. So why do games work? And this really speaks to interactivity in general. The research tells us that games work because they play on attendee emotions. You know, at MDG, we're all about influencing both hearts and minds. We know that, you know, in B2B communication and sales, we play very much on people's rationality. We talk about returns, we talk about, you know, the smart moves to make. But at the end of the day, the people who are at a trade show are individuals. They're hungry, they're tired, they need a pretzel, they're bored, they're looking to their next, you know, the next thing on their schedule. And so playing to their emotions is a really smart way to get them to pay attention. So games generate excitement and fun. They raise the energy level in your booth. They make people want to stay longer. Games activate a little bit of greed and desire in people, especially if your prizes are good. Games activate people's competitiveness, which I think in the B2B world is pretty common. People have this streak in them. And games spark curiosity. You know, people want to see what's going on, especially if there's a crowd. And if your games are learning or product-based, that's even better because they're actually getting something about your company out of the game experience. So there really are a few different types of games, and depending on the style booth you have, any of these kinds might work for you. So sometimes you just want a game for visibility. You want something that people can see all the way down the aisle. And in these cases, you might look at like a big prize wheel. You might look at a Plinko or Pachinko wall, you know, like The Price is Right. Once people are there, you can draw them in with the content at your booth, but these types of games are all about just getting people's attention. This might be something that's new to you or budget is really a concern, especially if this is your first time doing a game. So you just kind of want to stick your toe in and see if it works, see if your team is ready to do it. So for something like this, you might consider like an instant win game. That scratch off material from like lottery tickets is actually really cheap to get at a printer and can be printed relatively quickly. So you might just consider printing up scratch offs and having a few prizes in the mix. Or you can try just a simple counting game. You know, you have marbles in a jar and people figure out how many there are. They have to submit their names to do it. That way you're getting leads. And even though these options are low budget, they really are still more engaging than just having a table and chairs. As a marketer, I have to point out, it's my duty to say that the best games are those where attendees are motivated to learn about your business, engage with your products. This helps games really be high signal. They're really speaking to your company value. They're not just noise. So for these, you might think about trivia games. People get points or prizes for answering questions correctly. You could have people compete head to head. You could have them compete against a field. There's a winner at the end of every day. Or you could just have a simple, you win if you get a question right. We've seen passports work really well, and by that I mean visitors getting stamps by visiting certain kiosks or exhibits at your booth. If you have 2 or more stops, this works. Once they complete their passport or just a certain number of stops at the booth, they would get a prize, or they would get entered to win a bigger prize, depending on how you want to play it. And you can kind of combine this effect with some of the other types of games, right? So if you have a win to spin game, you get a trivia question right, and then you get to spin the prize wheel. That nets you both. You get high engagement, high visibility, and the value of actually getting them to think about your product. So here's some tips to make games work in your booth. Keep them simple. You should be able to explain how it works and what somebody can win in 30 seconds max. If it takes longer than 30 seconds, people glaze over, they're backing away. It's not working. You want to tie the content back to your product or service. It kind of sounds hokey, but again, this is the thing. In a trade show context, these work better than games that are just fun and don't tie back to your company. You want to think about branding and signage. So you want to make the colors and themes work with your booth design. You can use digital screens and other signage to pull people in. One common mistake might be to have a game that you play on an iPad, but there's no bigger indicator that something's happening. So from down the aisle, all people see is people looking at screens. That's not exciting. If there's a big display with a leaderboard or something like that, that really helps. Prizes are not optional. You have to give people something. You really should have multiple prizes or multiple ways to win, and the prizes you should try to tie them back to your company. At the very least, get your logo on there. Prizes should be valuable. So that doesn't mean expensive. It just means something that people will really use. So for me, I'm always looking for like cloths to clean my glasses because I don't know, they're always filthy. On a trade show floor, hand sanitizer is like a given. So just think about what people in this industry are doing, what they need, people are traveling, what's valuable to people in that space. You also want to make sure that, as you're putting together prizes, you can leverage partnerships you already have. If you have a vendor you work with, see if you can get free samples or some kind of in-kind donation. You can co-brand a giveaway, and then you're not spending anything on prizes. You've got a bunch of valuable prizes, and it really solves the budget problem. Make sure you have enough staff on hand. This goes for the whole booth, not just games. There's really nothing worse than, having a game that actually pulls people, your sales team and product experts, away from talking to clients. If you're spending all your energy running the game, you're no longer having a successful experience. If this means hiring a couple of temps to just come in and run the game so you can focus on customers, that's totally an option. And finally, capture leads. So don't let people play without getting something in return. And at trade shows, what you want to be getting in return is contact information. That means zapping people's badges, getting their cards, entering their information into an iPad or something. If it's a digital game, make them put their email address into play. So that's one of the reasons gamification is so exciting to marketers, that it's really a wonderful data entry point. People feel good about giving you their email if you're giving them something fun to do. So this is a great opportunity. Even if you're not able to have a deep conversation with every gamer who stops at your booth, you can follow up afterwards. So if it can't be a game, or if this is just sounding like too much, it should be an event or some sort of, again, a differentiator from just table and chairs. This is a double negative, but there shouldn't be nothing going on in your booth. So I'm including all of this as a part of pre-show marketing because, again, 75% of people have their plan coming in. So if they don't know about your in-booth activities until they get to the show, it may not make a difference. So if you're setting up these games, you're setting up these events, you want to make sure that that's in your communication very clearly so that people add you to their list coming in. Product demos are always appealing. If it's possible to make these hands-on, that's a great idea too. You might consider offering some kind of micro education, a quick 10-minute demo, maybe paired with a little lecture about how it works or what the research is behind it. So quick seminars on how things work. Again, making sure this is part of your pre-show promotion so people could be there on time. If you do decide to do demos or education, it's a good idea to repeat the sessions a few times throughout the days of the show, since people often, oh, I have that at 10, but then they get stuck on the other side of the trade show floor and don't make it. You want them to be another session they can make it to later. If you have the room in your booth, you can hire someone to put together a cool display. I've seen murals created on site, people putting little installations together. Obviously, you need to work with the Expo group to get permissions for all of this, but this is definitely an option if there's nothing that your team can do. But there might be something your team knows how to do. If somebody can draw, they can make the mural. I don't know, maybe somebody can juggle. Talk through your team, the group that's going to the show, and think about what kind of events you can have. This is worth a brainstorming meeting. And whatever you do, start now. I sound like a broken record, but the biggest mistake that booth planners make is not planning an event or a game or anything like that until they're 6 weeks away from a show. And suddenly they have to throw something together. They have no time to notify people that it's happening. So if there's one takeaway you get from this webinar, it is to put a planning meeting on the books in the next week. Okay, so you have an amazing booth, you have super fun games or a cool event, you have the right mix of staff, you know what your objectives are, you know how you're going to measure them, and now you just need to get people there. So I mentioned a few times that you should have a marketing plan for your show, and you may already have a team that's dedicated to doing this. Whether you have or haven't already started working on this, we've taken the legwork out of that marketing by providing a lot of tools that will help you promote your presence at the Car Wash Show. And that's this Partners in Promotion Toolkit. So we've created a checklist where you can quickly see what needs to be done before and after the show. You can use this checklist to build out a full schedule of pre-show promotion, adding your ideas to ours. And hopefully alongside this session, you do have some good ideas for promoting your presence at the show. All of these tools are available on the Car Wash Show site right now, but since they're brand new, I want to give you a sneak peek. So first off, logos. You should be adding the show logo and your booth number to anything, print ads, any print pieces, any marketing you're going to do between now and the show. Make sure that people do recognize what show you're talking about. We have 4 different sizes of banner ad. I've shown you 2 here, but there's more. You can use these on your website. So if your site has rotating ads, get together with your webmaster and ask them to include these in the mix, linking back to the show site. That makes sure people know you're going to be there and just raises the awareness of your presence at this show. If you have a company newsletter or another publication, you can insert banner ads into that and link back. That's easy promotion that doesn't necessarily require a whole lot of extra legwork. We provided some social media graphics and text for social media posts that let you highlight your participation at the show. So you can customize these in pretty much any way you want. So tweak the text, say, this is a great place to say what you have going on at your booth. We have this event, we have a cool new product launch, we have, fun games to look forward to, games and prizes. So this is a great place to kind of tweak these posts and say something specific. And again, social is really good in the last 4 to 6 weeks before an event, as people are finalizing their travel plans, but it's never too early to get started. And there's more. You can promote the show to every single lead in contact by including a logo and your booth number in your email signature. We've provided you with some copy showing you how to do that. This is kind of a nice, passive method of promotion. If you ask everybody on your team to do this, everybody they talk to is aware of your booth number and where you're going to be at the show. We've also included some copy for you to use to invite your customers to the show. Again, this is separate from the Register a Customer program that you've heard about that allows you to sign your customers up for the show. This is just a template you can use to reach out to customers, new leads, or any regional contacts and ask them to come to the show or let them know that you'll be there. So again, in this copy, you really should modify it to include any in-booth events, special unveilings, or anything else you're doing at the show. And finally, we've included a template follow-up email for you to use to reach out afterwards. So these follow-up emails should tie back to the event and any specific data that you might have captured about a lead. So if someone asks for something specific, you want to customize these emails to say that you've included it. Hopefully you're really getting detailed data about every lead you capture. And there's more information about that in your exhibitor portal on the Expo Group side on how to get your lead retrieval really well set up to serve you. And I know the title of this presentation is Pre-Show Marketing, but because it's part of our kit, I really want to mention the importance of following up. I have heard some crazy statistics about following up after shows and what companies actually do with their leads. And some stats suggest that 75 to 80% of exhibitors don't follow up after shows, or that they don't have a follow-up plan in place. And I know that that statistic probably varies really widely by industry, but regardless of what people don't do, I really don't care about them. I care about you. And I can tell you that your pre-show marketing plan should include a system to follow up after the show. Now's the time to think about it, because leading up to the show, you won't have time, and after the show, you'll be on to the next thing. You need a plan in place now. One of the best pieces of advice I can give is that you should really follow up within 2 days. According to a 2014 lead response report that was done by Inside Sales, 35 to 50% of sales go to the exhibitor who responds first. So if I reach out to a couple of people I talk to, the first person who gets back to me is probably the person I'm going to connect with most. Exhibitor Magazine reported in 2015 that 62% of exhibitors who do follow up reach out within the first 5 days. So if you want to be the first, you've got to act fast. And that honestly means you should set up a plan before you leave for the show. We recommend getting those follow-up emails out within 48 hours of the show while it's still fresh, while they still remember your conversation. And doing that may mean some coordination with people back on the ground at your home office, sending leads back for people to follow up with. If you're not able to do it within 48 hours, the world won't end. It's more important that you do it. You really should be screening your leads. So you really should only pass along leads to your sales reps that are qualified, and that qualification is whatever you set in your objective. So the 2015 sales survey I mentioned, 69% of marketers pass all their leads on to the sales team without vetting them. And it doesn't matter to me who does the vetting, if it's sales, if it's marketing, if you hire an intern to check people against some criteria, someone should be checking those leads before the follow-ups start to go out. And remember, again, that ties back to your objectives. Whatever counts as qualified is whatever you say counts as qualified, but you have to make that decision mindfully rather than just trying to filter people after the fact. And it's not always about an immediate sale. A huge part of this is about nurturing leads and developing an ongoing relationship. Forrester research found that nurtured leads make 50% more sales and spend 33% less doing it. So the cherry on top is that only 16% of companies nurture leads until they become customers. So there's a lot of room to grow here. Is there a way to put the leads that match your objectives into like a longer term database, a longer term funnel for information? If you know they match your objectives, they don't get back to you right away, don't lose hope. Don't stop communicating with them. Maybe this was just regular follow-ups, but maybe it's just informational, sending news releases, checking in socially. A low pressure approach really works well for nurturing, and that should be in your plan before the show starts. And finally, I really want to encourage you to vary the medium. Everyone is tired of email. If they say they're not, I think they're lying to you. That 2015 sales lead survey tells us that only 5% of companies follow up with direct mailers versus 52% who use email. And because it's so unusual, you may be better served by sending a flyer or a handwritten note. This is from the Direct Marketing Association's 2015 response rate report, which found that you get a 3.7% response rate on direct mail when you send it to a pool of recipients from a pre-existing internal house list. That means a list that you've been nurturing and working on over time. 3.7 doesn't sound like much until you look at the direct mail responses for new prospects. That's only 1% of people. If you're just sending out direct mail cold, you don't really get as much of a response as you do to leads that you've nurtured. But for email, no matter the list, no matter how well nurtured they are, the response rate on email is 0.1%. That's either pool. So while I would never tell you to stop emailing your customers, it's an important way to be, in their ear and make them aware of you. This idea of using direct mail to follow up can be a really good interrupter to the constant flow of email. And if it's a group that you're already connected with and you've already developed a relationship with, you're really going to have better success. And it's something to consider. So as I wrap this up, everything that I've mentioned in terms of the Partners in Promotion Kit is available to you at the URL on your screen. So that's thecarwashshow.com/marketing-toolkit. And you can get a head start on planning your presence at the show. You can also reach out to me if you do have any questions, and you can always reach out to Carrie as well. We're totally here to help you think through promotions and your presence at the show. And I think that's it from me. Carrie, do you have anything you want to add?
We look forward to seeing everyone in Nashville. Thanks.
All right, guys. Thanks so much. See you in Nashville.